The first question I will make to you is, who are you? How would you define yourself?
I'm a philosopher, but I'm not interested in doing what a lot of philosophers do. I'm interested in thinking about things that make a difference to human life and doing philosophical work that contributes to the quality of human life. And I think the best way that we can do that is to understand ourselves, understand human nature. And to do that, we need to go to biology. We need to look at where we came from, what kind of animals we are, what nature has built into us. In order to understand why we lie, first of all, we have to understand what lying is. Now, I use the word lying in a very, very broad sense. I use it really to mean deception, to give others misleading information about ourselves. And so if you think about lying that way, you realize that a lot of lying isn't verbal. It's not what we say, it's what we don't say, it's the way that we conduct ourselves, the way we hold ourselves, it's cosmetics and fake breasts and wigs and hair pieces and so on and so forth. When you look at lying in that way, you realize that, first of all, we're not alone in lying, that we find lying throughout nature, that animals and even plants regularly deceive one another. And so now we can ask, why is that? Why do living things deceive? And the reason for that is that it provides advantages. So if I can manipulate your perceptions of me in a way that provides advantages to me, I will do so. Nature built into our ancestors this tendency to lie, this tendency to distort reality, this tendency to manipulate others' impressions of us, because it's helpful. If you can pull it off, if you can do it effectively, you get something in return. And there's a lot of work, there are a lot of studies that show that the best liars are the people who are most successful in life.
Why should I believe you if you're lying me? You know this test of the Athenians? It's a test, a philosophical test, which it's a circle. All Mexicans would tell lies. I am a Mexican. Is he telling me the truth, or is he lying?
Oh, yeah, of course, yeah, that's the liar paradox. I think you have to think about all sorts of things that you always think about when you're engaging with another person. I mean, we all, when we encounter other people and they give us information, we all weigh up to what extent we should believe it. I mean, we have to ask ourselves, is it to that other person's advantage to deceive us? And if it is, then we're cautious. So that's another interesting aspect of human nature. You see, we're built to be suspicious of one another.
The issue is not why we lie to others.
Yeah.
What for me really was very provoking about your book and your writing and research is why we lie to ourselves.
Yeah. Deception. You know, as I said, we find deception throughout nature. Plants, animals, wherever you look, there's deception. But human beings are capable of something which perhaps no other creature is capable of, which is deceiving ourselves, lying to ourselves. Now, we need to ask ourselves, we be built to distort reality to ourselves? That seems very puzzling. You see, it would seem like no creature could evolve to do that sort of thing because it seems so disadvantageous. You know, it seems to create a handicap. There is a good way to understand this, and it was first expressed by the great writer Mark Twain almost 100 years ago. Mark Twain said, "Someone who can't lie to themselves is unlikely to be able to lie to others very well." Now, the fact is, as we explored a little while ago, human beings are suspicious of one another, and they're quite skilled at assessing the credibility of one another. So how do you hide? Well, if I'm lying to you, and I'm a normal human being, I may give away information inadvertently. Now think of this. If you hide the truth from yourself, you hide it more effectively from others. This was an idea that a couple of biologists hit upon in the 1970s, Robert Trivers and Richard Alexander, and I think it's a very, very good idea. You see, when you're aware of something, it's potentially public. Right? You could torture it out of me or something. But if I really don't know, if I've concealed the truth from myself, then there's not going to be any leakage. There's some cause for reassurance. That is, it must be the case that most of what we say to ourselves and others is true. And that's very easy to demonstrate. If most of what we communicated wasn't true, lies would have no value. Lies are parasitic on the truth.
Okay.
You know the story of the boy who cried wolf. Most of our beliefs, most of our communications must be true, and that's what gives lies their power, you see. That's what gives them their importance. In terms of Freud, well, I think Freud had a lot right and a lot wrong. What he had very right was, well, one of the things he had very right is that our mental life goes on largely without our awareness. That much of our mental life is unconscious, that we selectively reveal aspects of our mental life to ourselves. So human beings are as much unknown to themselves as other human beings are unknown to them. That's correct. And he was right, I think, in saying that our unconscious concerns are kind of raw, fundamental concerns. Where he was wrong about self-deception, I think, is, well, it was illustrated by your summary of his view. Freud thought ultimately we deceive ourselves in order to protect ourselves from pain. I think that's wrong. And it doesn't make good biological sense. Any evolutionary biologist would say, well, how come nature didn't make us so that we were less sensitive to this sorts of thing? And then we wouldn't be paying the cost, having to pay the cost of self-deception. I think but that idea is very reassuring to a lot of people, oddly enough. If I lie to myself, it's to protect myself from pain and trauma. Who could be blamed for that? I think what's closer to the truth is that we more often lie to ourselves to manipulate others, and that's harder to swallow. People interact and they size each other up and they decide what they could say and how they should say it to produce an impression on the other person. The other person is making the same calculations. It's an unbelievably complicated dance. And a lot of the time we don't know what we're doing. We're dancing in the dark. We don't know what we're doing because we're unconsciously making all the moves.
Why are we the most dangerous animal?
We're the most dangerous animal because we have the power to destroy one another. That's simply it, really. I mean, first of all...
But like many other animals.
Yeah, that's right. But we've got this intellect that allows us to do destruction like everything else much more effectively. So what I wanted to convey by the title, The Most Dangerous Animal, though, is not that we're objectively the most dangerous animal. It might be argued the mosquito is the most dangerous animal.
The female mosquito.
That's right. But I'm
meaning
it in a somewhat different way. What I'm trying to get across is two things. We're animals, and we are dangerous. We are ferocious animals, and we're a great danger to our own species. We're our own main predator, and that's been the situation for a very long time.
To be the most polite and kindness animal.
And the two go together.
Could you...
The two go together.
Look, elaborate on this topic?
Let's think about the difference between war and murder. Totally different phenomena. Murder is an individualistic thing. You have some problem with someone, normally. You have some individual motive, and you kill them from rage or for revenge. War is a cooperative activity. A number of people have to cooperate actually very, very effectively in order to band together to wipe out their neighbors. We tend to think, well, there's war, violence, and there's cooperation, and they're opposites. They're not. War is also altruistic. When people go to war, they take great personal risk in order to embark on this activity. So war and altruism actually go together. If we weren't highly social, cooperative animals, we could never, without If we were not so social and cooperative, Auschwitz would have been impossible. Auschwitz required tremendous organization, tremendous cooperation, a bunch of people working together. So that's kind of a paradox of human nature. It's the very feature of us that allows us to share, to give, to cooperate, that allows us to exterminate members of our own kind.
Talking about blank slates and about differences, do you find any difference between, for example, gender, male and female, in terms of dangerosity, about criminality, about...
The research suggests that it's a very interesting topic. If we look at the history of warfare, a tiny minority of women have been warriors. Now, one explanation of that might be, well, women were excluded from the military like they were excluded from everything else. That's probably not a very good explanation. That's partially true. But if you look historically, it was no privilege to be a soldier, generally. Soldiers were a little better than slaves, so it's, you know.
It's still the same thing, in many countries.
Yeah, that's true. Now, if we look at the propensity to express violence, there we find much higher level of violence in men than women. If you look, for instance, at the statistics of, just on the murder statistics, moving away from war, something like 98% of the murders are committed by men. It's just vastly different. So that might suggest that males are more intrinsically aggressive than females, but that isn't even right. Because if we look at the statistics on the support for wars, there's relatively little difference between men and women.
That's interesting.
Right?
That's a great
So
point.
men kind of do the dirty work, but women are almost every bit as much in favor of warlike activity than men. If we look at it in evolutionary terms, if we look deep into our prehistory, warriors are, in most cultures, are sexually attractive. They're sexually attractive because a warrior in a traditional culture both establishes reputation, which is status, but also can go out and get stuff. War is theft. So if warriors are good resourcers, then females in prehistory must have bred selectively with warriors. They must have had more sexual opportunities than ordinary guys, which in fact there's research showing they do.
And a lot of things come because of our evolutionary nature.
Yeah.
Where comes freedom around all these topics? Where really we are free to choose what we want to be or to do?
Our evolution doesn't stop us from being free. That's a philosophical question.
I know.
What is freedom? Freedom is being able, in my view, is being able to do what you want. We can't help what we want. That doesn't make us unfree. What makes us free is if we can do what we want. So nature has given us these wants, evolution has given us these wants, and has also given us the means to accomplish them.
Yes.
See, if it's required that if we're to be free, we must be able to make decisions independent of anything else. This, in the end, it leads to a ridiculous conclusion. It means that we must be able to choose what we don't want, which is a contradiction in itself. How can I choose what I don't want?
What was the last time that you lied to yourself and then later you recognize it? Could you, even if it is more than a word, that you say, here, be careful with myself?
Well, I don't usually say that. It's usually my wife who points out that I've lied to myself.